Hi, welcome back to my channel and part 3 of my retrospective of the works of Michael Powell. And today we're discussing the beautiful, fun and wonderful The Thief of Baghdad. This was Alexander Korda's great super production that he'd been planning for years, from 1933 actually, and it only started production in 1939. And it went through 6 directors, one of whom was Michael Powell. So he wasn't a major auteur influence on this film. But it is important, this film, in Michael Powell's career. Basically what happened was Korda had been planning a version of this story, which was filmed, of course, in the silent era by Douglas Fairbanks. He'd been planning to make it for years, a big super production. Korda, at that time, he was Hungarian by birth, but he was the major sort of production figure in British cinema. And he'd been planning a version of The Thief of Baghdad, and eventually he got to make it in 1939. And originally he got a German director, Ludwig Berger, to direct it. But he and Berger, by all accounts, fell out, and so he kind of moved in Michael Powell. So this was a huge moment in Powell's career, really. Up until that point, he'd been making fairly small, independent or studio pictures. But now, the major figure in British film said, yeah, you're the talented guy, come in, you can do it. And Powell started doing most of the work at Denham Studios. But then the war broke out. And the whole thing had to be moved to America. They were planning to film it in Africa. They then had to film it in the Grand Canyon. And they had to change directors because Powell was moved by Korda onto another film called The Lion Has Wings, which was a propaganda movie about the Air Force against the Germans. And not a very interesting film, really, to be quite honest. But also important in Powell's career because it was the first of these propaganda films that he would work on and which would become major parts of his career in the coming films throughout the 1940s. This was a very important transitional period in Powell's career. But basically, Korda took the whole production to Hollywood and remounted it in Hollywood with different directors like Tim Whelan. Had about 6 different directors. And I must admit, in the end product, it's quite hard to see what Powell did. But we can detect Powell's presence, firstly in the casting. The villain, Jaffa, the Grand Vizier who's evil, is played by Conrad Veidt from his 2 Conrad Veidt spy films, from The Spy in Black and Contraband, which we discussed previously. Also, the casting of the genie. We know that Powell filmed the genie scenes down in Cornwall. And the genie was played by Rex Ingram, who was a hero of Powell's. Rex Ingram is brilliant in the film. He's very funny as the genie. He gives a sense of cleverness and also slight silliness at the same time. And he's a real highlight of the film. And also, I think, the opening scene. I don't know if Powell filmed it, but I like to think that he did, because the camera moves up on the prow of a ship, and on it is painted an eye, a great motif of Michael Powell's. That's how the film starts. And that is how the film goes on. That basically it's telling you to look, to gaze in wonder at our wonderful Technicolor, at our wonderful sets, the wonderful special effects. This is a film to gaze at, and it is beautiful. The Technicolor is wild. You know, you have wood that's painted green and purple, and all these fantastic costumes. It's a gorgeous film. And of course, it's also important for Michael Powell because it was his first film in Technicolor, something he would become famous for, working with Jack Cardiff on things like Black Narcissus and The Red Shoes, Blimp, Matter of Life and Death. That beautiful 40s Technicolor is something that Powell would become a master of. And this is his first experience of it, this film. So again, another reason why it's a very important transitional film for Powell. But let's forget the cinephile stuff for a second. What is the joy of this film? Oh my God, watching this film, as I watched it again the other day, it takes you back to being 5 years old. It has genies in bottles, flying carpets, clockwork horses that can race through the sky. It has a sultan who is obsessed with clockwork toys, beautiful women, beautiful guys, beautiful heroes. It's got songs, and it's full of lustrous colour and great landscapes. It's a real, guilty pleasure joy for the child in all of us. It's great fun. And there's not much else really to say about it. One of the things that's interesting about the movie purely from a technical perspective, Michael Powell claimed that there was no script, that the script was kind of made up as it went along, and you can kind of tell it's a very fragmented film, but it has a strength in that because it moves so quickly. I've never seen a 1940s film move with such pace. You know, you get a scene and they've got a problem, and the next thing they're out, they've escaped, and they're on a boat, and the next thing they're in a city and they're having an adventure and meeting a princess, and the next thing, and it non-stop. It's bang, bang, bang. It's only an hour and 40 minutes, and my God, it moves at a lick. It makes a lot of modern movies look slow. You know, I don't know if you've gone to see any sort of blockbuster movies recently, but my God, aren't they long and distended and boring? Take themselves so seriously. Put your kids in front of this movie. They will love it. It doesn't stop. It just on it goes, on and on and on it goes. And it's in love with production design, in love with special effects and matte paintings of great cities extending into the sky. You know, and the love of effects. You know, for example, there's one scene where Sabu, who plays the thief of Baghdad, he was a popular child star in Britain at the time, an Indian actor. He was also in Elephant Boy. And he has to get this crystal out of the eye of an idol, which glows bright red. It's the all-seeing eye. And he has to climb up this vast structure. And on his way, there's this giant spider who tries to fight him in a cobweb. He beats it rather easily, but anyway. And then he fights the spider, and then he gets the jewel. And the cinematography is beautiful. So that now, once he's got the jewel, the whole temple goes into darkness. And as he climbs down, you don't see him, you can only see the shadows, and all you can see is the red dot going down the statue. It's a beautiful touch. It's how this movie operates. It's just enjoying effects for the sake of it, really. And it's full of humour. The script was partly written by Miles Malleson, who's a very famous eccentric actor, and he plays the Sultan father of the beauty in the film. Very sort of eccentric English actor. And you can tell it's his script because it combines that kind of old-fashioned mythical dialogue that says, you know, where have you come from? I've come from the end of time. How long will you love me? I will love you to the end of time. That kind of stuff, which I love. And it combines that with very silly, very eccentric English dialogue and frivolity. It's a nice combination. And that sort of feel in the film goes throughout, so that when the genie laughs, they have an avalanche, you know, and the rocks start falling everywhere, you know. It's a great fun film. I can recommend it to anyone for family viewing or just indulgent viewing on your own, and you want to go back to being a kid again. The Thief of Baghdad is gorgeous. But as I say, a very important transitional movie for Michael Powell. But after this movie and The Lion Has Wings, he will form his own production company with Emmerich Pressburger, The Archers, and the real Michael Powell comes into being with 49th Parallel, and that's the film we'll be looking at next time.